I want to talk about the debate. Not a lot of people watched the debate. Not that anybody expected anyone, in great numbers to watch the debate. I would love to see the numbers on that. But if you watched it, you learned that essentially, this is my takeaway, Susan Crawford checked the box on everything we have said about Susan Crawford. Recuse herself on Act 10? No. Is she going to respect the voter ID vote and the amendment? Probably not. Did she solicit money from Reid Hoffman and other people in exchange for congressional gerrymandering? Yeah. Did she let sex offenders off with light sentences and defend that? Absolutely. They've been saying Brad Schimel's lying. And then she said, yeah, okay, yes, and everything she was accused of.
Yeah, I'm literally looking at my notes, and you kind of went through all of them. You're absolutely correct. She really confirmed, I think, a lot of the claims, right? If people think that these were just political claims from Judge Schimel, well, she basically confirmed them last night. With respect to Act 10, right, it's a constitutional amendment, not a case before the court. So I think actually it would be fair to answer that question. She refused to answer whether or not she, with respect to voter ID, she refused to answer that question. Judge Schimel said, yes, he's voting for it. With respect to the litigation that she was involved in over voter ID, she gave a very technical answer that, she was just representing, the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan group. And
they're not nonpartisan. That's a lie, right? That's a lie.
That's absolutely a lie. With respect to redistricting, I thought that was an extremely weak answer. Just to say that she somehow ended up on this Zoom call with billionaires and Democratic operatives is laughable. And I think you could almost tell with her response that she knows that is just an absurd response to say that she didn't know what the call was about, and she just kind of stumbled into it.
Oops! I clicked your Zoom link for the donor call with Reid Hoffman, J.B. Pritzker, Eric Holder, and other assorted Soros-funded billionaires or Soros-supporting billionaires.
Right, but so we can talk about that. But also, I think there was a very, very telling moment in that debate. From both a political standpoint, but also a jurisprudential standpoint. In other words, how she's going to rule on cases if she wins this race. And it's with respect to abortion. Right? I was wrong. I did talk radio before the debate, and I predicted that this was all going to be about Trump and Elon Musk. The debate was about abortion. And so I think there has been a shift in the strategy from this campaign, which is interesting. It's almost like they're resurrecting the playbook from 2020 and 2023, just incessantly talking about abortion. And if you listen to her answers very closely, she basically telegraphs that she believes that there is a constitutional right to abortion, that kind of legislative determinations that may not be consistent with her values, are going to be open for review. That is telling. When we talk about a super legislature, and this is what the progressives want to turn this into, we need to dig a little deeper. In other words, how are they going to do that? She's telegraphing how they're going to do it.
She's going to do it through the court because she wants to be on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. But to say there is a constitutional right to abortion, where is she getting that? So she said she disagreed with Dobbs, but that's irrelevant. Where in Wisconsin's Constitution and where in the federal Constitution is she now finding that constitutional right to abortion? And to say her views that disagree, this is something that we never used to even think anybody would admit to. If my views disagree with statute, if my views disagree with the Constitution, well, my views are going to take precedent here. That's an abortion. That's kind of what she was saying. I think there's a constitutional right to abortion. Really? Because there isn't. And therefore, I am going to impose my views and values on statute in Wisconsin and Wisconsin's Constitution. Did anyone just say, hang on? We need to dive into that a little bit deeper, because that's like the antithesis of what a judge is supposed to do.
Well, and I thought Judge Schimel did a very effective job with that line of questioning, because he did point out, he kind of made the point that ultimately this is something, if the people disagree with the quote unquote 1849 law, even though it was significantly amended in the 1950s, but leave that aside for a moment. Even if you disagree with that, right, to your point, the question is not, is there some sort of constitutional right to abortion that can be discovered by the court, or is it something for the legislature to revisit? And if they think it needs to be fixed, then they fix it. And I think Judge Schimel did a very effective job of pointing that out. That look, the law is what it is, and if it's not inconsistent with the constitutional principle or clause, then it's for the legislature to revisit, not for the courts to revisit. And
you want your abortion to the very last moment of the 9th month of pregnancy, which Susan Crawford does, then you're going to have to convince people to vote for Democrats who would put forward that piece of legislation to enact a hideous policy like that into law. You have to sell that. You actually have to go convince a whole bunch of people that, late-term pregnancies should result in abortion for any reason under the sun. Feel free. Go ahead and make that pitch and see if you can get enough Democrats elected, because you know what? Tony Evers would sign it. He's for that. But the Democrats know they can't do that. They can't make that pitch, which is why they want Susan Crawford on the court, because in the liberal majority, that's how all the liberal majority women on this court, that's how they think. They think that they should be the ones to just simply divine rights out of thin air.
Well, so Vicki, I think you and I talked about this, but I actually know the attorney who is litigating the case involving District Attorney Urmansky, former colleague, amazing litigator. I urge everybody to go and watch that oral argument on the 1849 case. I have never seen justices almost personally attack a lawyer like they did with my former colleague, Matt Tome, who did a wonderful job litigating that case and making the oral argument. And I think he made it very clear. Look, people certainly have very different views on the 1849 law, and look, that's up to the policymakers to decide whether or not we need to revisit that, whether that should really be consistent or supersede the 20-week ban. Right? That's a policy decision. But to watch the questioning, it was very instructive, because it was almost 100% policy arguments straight from the four liberal justices, to the point of even making, they were making arguments, right? It's not the job of justices to make arguments. They should be asking questions. Even to the point of the justices making the argument that, the law was passed prior to suffrage for women. The law was passed prior to, any number of rights that were later enshrined, and therefore it's unconstitutional, which begs the question. So every law passed prior to 1919 is now unconstitutional. That is an absurd argument.
Homicide,
that has absolutely no basis.
Theft, burglary, bank robbery, rape,
intentional murder.
Right.
Homicide.
All those are just, because, women couldn't vote. So all those laws should be stricken. Back to voter ID, though, I think this is really interesting. I think people need to understand this. Already, Susan Crawford has telegraphed that there could be constitutional challenges to the way the amendment was drafted and passed. She's already telling people, she's already inviting challenges to the amendment we have still not voted on voter ID. So on voter ID, I'm just going to go out on a limb and I'm just going to say it. She will overturn a constitutional amendment on voter ID. So if we all go on April 1st and we vote yes, we want voter ID. It also, by the way, the language of that includes some exceptions. We want voter ID for voting in Wisconsin state elections. She's already said that she's already invited the challenge based on process to overturn that constitutional amendment. So she's such a radical on voter ID that she's already inviting the case that gives her an opportunity to overturn an amendment that we have still not voted on.
That's an amazing point, Vicki. I kind of noticed that. I'm sure not many people did. That absolutely is what she was doing last night. I mean, she's correct that many times there has been litigation following these amendments. So basically, she's alerting all the special interests that look, we're gonna be very open to a procedural argument as to this amendment, because they know really substantively on the merits they're not going to have an argument, right? This has been the law in Wisconsin now for over 12 years. It's withstood judicial scrutiny on the merits, so they're not going to really have an argument on the merits. So they're going to have to attack the process. And there is case law where they have attacked the process. I'm not quite sure what that argument would be, but it
won't matter. Jake, isn't it? No, you're a lawyer. You're trying to think like a lawyer. What would the lawyer's argument be? It won't matter. They can say into a dictation machine and spit out gibberish. And as long as somebody stands up there and reads the gibberish, they're good. The girls on the court are good with this. The 4 liberal Karens on the court are good with that. So, I mean, that's the most frustrating thing is, and we all keep trying to say, well, geez, what would their argument be? They don't need to really make much of an argument. They didn't need to make much of an argument against Act 10 in Dane County Court. They didn't really need to make much of an argument about drop boxes before the left-wing Supreme Court. I don't think they're going to have to make much of an argument at all.
Well, and I think I've made this argument probably a dozen times on your show. I'm sure people are getting sick of hearing it, but this is why really this race comes down to the difference between I'm going to make decisions based on my values versus I'm going to make decisions based on what it really comes down to, and you and I have talked about, this is rational basis for review.
Right. But you know what? This is why Brad Schimel can't, rational basis for review should not be ever uttered by Brad Schimel because nobody understands it. So if he says it, I'm going to smack him, metaphorically. This race is about politics. That's what she is saying. I am going to be all about my politics. Everything I do will be about politics. It has nothing to do with the law. Her values are her politics are her values. That's it. She's saying, I'm a left-wing politician, and that is what I'm going to bring to this court, the left-wing political vote. And we got to say it bluntly so that people understand this, because it's a dead heat, Jake. I'm shocked. It's 47-47 out there with persuadable people in the middle, and you're kind of thinking, how do you persuade these people in the middle? Do you want a left-wing politician on the court, or do you want a judge? And, Schimel's somebody who's willing to be a judge. She's saying, I'm going to be a left-wing politician.
Well, and to that point, Vicki, again, debates are interesting, right? This is the one and only time that they were in the room together. I actually thought the moderators did a pretty good job of asking both of them, pretty tough questions. I think Judge Schimel did a far better job handling those questions. I thought it was very telling, well, to your point, Vicki, when Judge Schimel pressed her, Judge Crawford, on the rally that was held last weekend with, I mean, as a Christian, I can't imagine more vile language that was spewed from the stage. And she got defensive. And I think she knows that is a significant vulnerability for her because she had to distance herself. Now, as far as I know, that was the first time she has distanced herself from it. Nobody in the mainstream media has talked about it. But I thought that was a telling moment. She knows that she is flirting with the far, far left of the progressive movement in Wisconsin.
Not flirting. She is the far left. Look, she's the one. She was like, Bernie's coming for me? Awesome. She is the far left. To try to get defensive about that, you can say, well, it wasn't my rally. Yeah, it was. He was there for you. You are the far left. You're telling the far left. You're telling the teachers union, the people you want to load up the polls on April 1st. You're telling those people, I am you. We are the same. Our politics are the same. I think that a man dressed up in a wig, claiming to be a woman, singing about the male appendages of Jesus Christ during Lent, that's what she is endorsing. She wants people on her side to know that. She wants to, just not talk about it to those that 6% that's swayable in the middle. She just wants to pretend it never happened to them because she doesn't want them to know she is as radical as Bernie Sanders.
Right. Well, and she took the same approach when it came to George Soros. I actually thought Judge Schimel handled that line of questioning well. I mean, obviously Elon Musk is directing significant support to Judge Schimel, and so objectively, we have to point that out. But he, I thought, made a very good point. Look, Elon Musk, right? He's a successful businessman who clearly cares about the future of this country, and he's interested in this race. But he pointed out her biggest supporter, George Soros, right, has spent decades trying to undermine essentially the judicial system by way of supporting extreme left-wing district attorneys. I mean, when your candidates are losing and getting primaried in places like L.A. and San Francisco, you've kind of pressed the limit.
But you know what? That's her values. And I think you're right. He did actually make a good job. He didn't actually say it, but he should have said, those are your values, my dear. Jake, I'm out of time in this segment. I so appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you, Vicki. Appreciate it.
Jake Curtis, Institute for Reforming Government.